Well, at the end of First Chronicles, there's this story of David as king gathering together all the people and all the governors and rulers, and there's this huge celebration and basically a worship service in honor of God and all the blessings that he had given to his people throughout David's life. And then they transition into having a party for David's son Solomon, who's going to be crowned king. And it says this in verse 22, 1 Chronicles chapter 29, they ate and drank with great joy in the Lord's presence that day. Then for a second time they made David's son Solomon king. They anointed him as the Lord's ruler and Zadok as the priest. Solomon sat on the Lord's throne as king in place of his father David. He prospered and all Israel obeyed him. And then it goes on to talk about how all of the leaders and military men and rulers of the day came and paid their respects to Solomon and praised him and honored him. And they celebrated that God had blessed their nation with a good king in Solomon. And it's kind of one of these things at the end of the book where sometimes Bible books end where they just kind of summarize some stuff that happened and we can really quickly kind of just move on, look over the details. But in this story, even though it's one of those things of like, well, of course we know that after David and Solomon became king, and there's a lot more details about Solomon's life throughout the Old Testament. But there's one little detail here that I don't want us to rush by that I think can give us a reminder of God's comfort and control during uncertain times. And it says this, where it says in verse 23, Solomon sat on the Lord's throne as king. And so it's really easy when we're reading this to just look at, well, Solomon is the one being crowned king and he's the one being honored and blessed, and it's summarizing that he's going to rule well for his people of Israel. But there's this key phrase there, this little detail that's very easy to jump over, that says that Solomon sat on the Lord's throne. Right? It's not David's throne. It's not Solomon's throne. Even though David is the king and now Solomon is the king, the authors of the scriptures are reminding us that even though David sat on that throne, even though Solomon sat on that throne, that ultimately that throne belonged to God. And there's great comfort in that for us, because it reminds us that no matter what is going on in the world, no matter what challenges we face, no matter who's in charge, who's making decisions, that the Lord is the one ruling over all things, that he is the one with the ultimate throne. And in fact, this is how the Bible ends. It ends with this reminder that Jesus is the one who sits on the throne of heaven. And Revelation was written at a time where the church was facing a huge crisis and great attacks on their faith and great struggles to worship and gather together. And God's word reminded them then and reminds us now that no matter what you see going on in the world, no matter what we're facing, no matter the ups and downs that we go through, that Jesus is the one on the throne. And it's how the Bible ends, with this reminder that God has placed Jesus on the throne, and so he is the one ruling and reigning over all things. And as his people, as people who've been forgiven and redeemed by Christ, those of us who belong to him, this is wonderfully comforting, because it's a reminder that no matter what happens in my life, no matter what I'm struggling with, no matter what I'm going through right now or in the future, that Jesus, who loves me and forgives me and has redeemed me, is ruling and reigning from his throne day after day. So my hope and prayer for you tonight is that you would take comfort in that truth. That no matter what's going on in the world, no matter what's going on in your world, that you would remember that it is the Lord's throne, and that Jesus is the one who sits on it for all eternity. And he is the one in control, ruling and reigning over all things. And that is good news for you and I, because he is a ruler, he is a king, he is a savior who loves you and cares for you. God's peace to you.